Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Next time you hear or see us, we will be at the NFL Combine. So look for that on this YouTube feed, on this podcast channel. Also look for it at our Substack, where we will be doing a Substack show from there. We'll be writing from there. We will be at the NFL Combine on Wednesday and Thursday. You can find us at billanddougosu.substack.com. But before we hop in the car and drive to Indy, Bill Landis, we wanted to do a show on something you just wrote for our Substack that you didn't exactly approach it this way, but for this show, I would like to call the curse of the second-year Buckeye running back.
Yes, it was interesting going through I went through the history of 1,000-yard freshmen. So Bo Jackson was the fifth. I looked at it from a more national perspective, which I think can maybe make you feel good. Or you can look at it from the specific Ohio State perspective and perhaps not feel so good.
Yeah, so I thought we may as well, like, for our Ohio State audience here, like I think if you want to read the more national perspective, and we'll get into it a little bit, you can certainly go do that over on the Substack. But why don't you run us through how many other true freshman Ohio State running backs gained 1,000 yards to set the baseline here? And then I think we can talk about maybe what is similar or different between those other Ohio State running backs and then Bo Jackson, who, of course, rushed for 1,090 yards last season for Ohio State.
Yeah, so at Ohio State, there have been 5 true freshmen. There have actually been 6 total freshmen, but Mike Weber was a redshirt freshman when he did it in 2016. So I didn't include him. This is just true freshmen. Bo Jackson became the 5th this past season. Before him, it was Travion Henderson in 2021, J.K. Dobbins in 2017, Maurice Clarett in 2002, and Robert Smith in 1990. And I can't always. Freshmen weren't eligible to play before 1974. Is that right? Like right before Archie, I think.
Right.
Freshmen weren't allowed to play. So it's not like there's a prolonged history of true freshmen starting running backs at Ohio State, but only 5 have reached 1,000 yards.
Yeah. And then it got like a little dicey for kind of everybody. By the way, Archie, 772 yards as a true freshman. Robert Smith and Maurice Clarett did not play their second years at Ohio State. And
Right.
So I don't think that's applicable to Bo Jackson, but I guess at the moment, briefly in the offseason, where people were wondering, is Bo Jackson going to be a Buckeye next year? That would have been the Robert Smith, Maurice Clarett. You're a product of your era. Like, things are happening in college football, and the result is you don't take the field in year 2. But you may, I don't know if people might run them through what happened with Robert Smith and Maurice Clarett.
So the Robert Smith thing was a dispute over academics, right? With an assistant coach that led him to not play football in 1991. He, I think, instead was on the track and field team and then came back to the football team in 1992. And then Maurice Clarett got suspended and never played for Ohio State again.
Yeah. Tried to go to the NFL and like all the crazy stuff, all that stuff. So like Bo Jackson, like, hey, you're great. You had 1,000 yards. Wait, you're leaving because everybody's a free agent. That would have been, again, like emblematic of the times, but it didn't happen. But I do think, because these are the other 2 examples are very fresh, I think, in the minds of Ohio State fans. And what happened with J.K. Dobbins and Travion Henderson is instructive, I think. Do you believe that there are perhaps lessons to be learned, if not like alerts maybe, but just like, hey, let's like keep this in mind?
Yeah, the Dobbins year, definitely. The Henderson year involved an injury. But I think even in that, there probably are still some lessons you can take away from it, presuming, knock on wood, that Bo Jackson is healthy as a sophomore.
The Travion, like, we didn't really know about the injury to Travion, though, until like later in the year, right? Like
until after the fact, yeah.
As
he was going through the year and not being effective, and no one was telling us like, hey, Travion doesn't look right. No one's like, he's hurt. It's like he's playing on a broken foot. Oh, okay. That would have been helpful 4 months ago.
As it was unfolding, I think perhaps based on what happened with J.K. Dobbins, a lot of people were wondering, is this what happened, but like this
Mhm.
is sophomore slump. This is, you feel some pressure. You're trying to hit home runs. You're not just taking what is there. I think you could watch Travion Henderson in that year and it would feel like, okay, like here's his opportunity to make a cut and he's not doing it. Is he not seeing it? I think it's worth being aware of the idea of when you are great that young at the running back position and they just hand you the ball and tell you to go, and it's certainly not all on you, but the opportunity is kind of there in your hands. I do think there is, as much as Travion had a broken foot, for sure, there also, I think, was some mental component to Travion as he was even like dealing with the broken foot. And it felt like maybe he and the coaching staff weren't exactly on the same page. And are you making it public? Are you not making it public? And J.K. Dobbins certainly dealt with that and said that after the fact. I do think there is a mental, emotional component for a second-year running back who is very successful as a freshman that Ohio State needs to make sure they have handled with Bo Jackson. And that is not about Bo Jackson. That is about the reality of being a young football player coming off a success in year one who has the ball in your hands.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's probably true of most positions. But for Bo to like kind of like elevate himself into this conversation, the guys like think of some of the names we're talking about here. Like these are all time great running backs in the program, and some guys who even like across the sport are held in pretty high regard, right? So you have to, I don't think to like guard against like whatever Bo Jackson thinking he's good, right? His name's Bo Jackson. he's had to deal with that for a while. I think he's got a pretty good handle on that kind of stuff. But you have to battle complacency a little bit, I guess. You have to make sure you're putting the right things in place to help those players take the next step. I think even in a successful season, I think you have to be aware of sort of what the areas for improvement are, because that was the one thing with with Travion. He was hurt, but then that second year was also when the conversation of like, well, maybe he doesn't see things great, like kind of started to bubble up, and then like followed him throughout the rest of his career and is even following him now into the NFL. And it's like, were we not noticing that as much as we should have when he was a true freshman, when he was just running by guys because he was super fast and new and exciting? So I think there's like those kind of things too. You have to, I don't know if guard against is the right word, but don't get distracted by, oh boy, 1,000 yards. That's nice. And miss sort of the deficiencies in a player's game that need to be worked on going into that second year.
I think it's just very human. I think this is not like to anticipate anything negatively, but it is just that it has happened with Ohio State. J.K. Dobbins was so interesting. As you wrote in the story, 1,403 yards as a freshman in 2017. Averaged 7.2 yards per carry. 2018, Mike Weber is more back in the picture and healthy. They're kind of sharing that load, and J.K. Dobbins goes from 1,403 yards to 1,053 yards. He goes from 7.2 yards per carry to 4.6 yards per carry. And in the back half of the year, 6 of 8 games in the back half of the year, he averaged under 4 yards per carry. Like he started out okay, and then it was just like he had a game where he averaged 2 yards per carry. It's like, what is happening here? And when you look at it, like in comparison, he averaged 4.6 yards per carry that year. Mike Weber averaged 5.5 yards per carry. So like that's not a gigantic gap, but it is a yard better, right? Like the other guy was kind of doing it a little bit better. He actually had more carries. He had more carries in year 2 and 350 fewer yards. And then in year 3, he goes nuts. He has 2,003 yards. He has 6.7 yards per carry. And he's like, as good of a running back as there is in the country, right there with Jonathan Taylor. The thing that I think, as you think about J.K. Dobbins, that is most instructive about this is Mike Weber, J.K. Dobbins' freshman year, Mike Weber was part of the deal, but he was hurt early. That kind of opened the door for J.K. They wound up, Dobbins had 194 carries, Weber had 101. In the next year, Dobbins had 203 carries, Weber had 172. And then his third year, Dobbins had 301 carries. Master Teague, as the second back, had 135. It was like third team All Big Ten or something. He had like 789 rushing yards as like a clear number 2 running back. Here's the thing that I think is maybe simultaneously like a temptation for a team to do the right thing to do, but also maybe the wrong thing to do. When you have a true freshman who had an above average load to carry, right? There's just, you did 1,000 yards, but I mean, like, Bo Jackson's up there, didn't quite get to 200 carries, but like he's carrying the ball a good amount.
He would have if he was the starter from day one. He didn't become the starter until the Minnesota game last year.
Now, I will say, like, to their credit with Bo Jackson last year, he had more than 15 carries against Washington. He had 17 for 80, and then he didn't have more than 15 carries in a game until November. And we all remember we were kind of watching that. It's like, why don't they make him the number one back? And it's like, well, I think they did make him the number one back. They're just not overusing him because they want to make sure that he's healthy at the end of the year. The end of his high school career was a little wonky, so like you don't want to put too much on him. And I think they actually managed it well. But do you believe that this is a temptation or perhaps even the right direction for a team? If you've used a guy as a true freshman, you perhaps are even more aware of not overusing him in year two. And the result is maybe you are more open to having him share the load. That if you're like, oh man, like he was kind of the number one back last year. Maybe let's try to get him more help in year two. And then that guy's like, hey, why am I now all of a sudden I was the starter? Now I'm sharing it. What are we doing? That is a little bit of the vortex that I am curious if teams could get caught up in. That it's almost like because you were the number one guy, they want you to be a timeshare guy in year two. And that plays with the head of the still pretty young running back.
I think it definitely happens. I don't know how prevalent it is, like, because like I went through all the like more national examples, and like that definitely popped up. In all the instances where the guys who got better, the guys who like kind of plateaued, and the guys who got worse. Like you saw that example, I think, in all three kind of data sets. I do think for like the J.K. Dobbins specific example, it's like you had a guy in the room who had already rushed for 1,000 yards of Mike Weber, right? So that's the thing that interests me with Bo. It's like that track record of production doesn't exist in the room aside from him. So might they look for the opportunities to create that scenario of more of a tandem because they relied on Bo so much as a freshman? Maybe. I think Ohio State's track record probably tells you the answer to that is yes. Or at least like Ryan Day's track record tells you the answer to that question is yes, especially the way the national championship season went with Travion and Quinshon. I don't know if I would apply that to like the entire sport, but I mean, everyone's sort of cognizant of the wear and tear you're putting on young running backs. I think you see a lot of teams going, or just running backs in general. I think you see more teams going away from the 250 carry a year bell cow kind of guy to, can we spread this around, to 2 or 3 players?
I think we're certainly more down that road than we were in 2018 when all of a sudden J.K. Dobbins was more sharing the load after being the number one guy as a true freshman, right? That 8 years later, 2026 is different than 2018 in that regard. It's much more common. If you were the running backs coach, if you were Carlos Lachlan, if you were Ryan Day, if you were sort of deciding this for 2026, as it stands right now, in your mind, would Bo Jackson be the number one running back and anybody else is a backup to him? Or would you be interested in seeing if Isaiah West or perhaps somebody else could be a true complement, sort of number one with Bo Jackson?
I'd see if someone could be a compliment. Yeah. I think Bo, I don't know if I put this in a story or not. Bo ended up with like 45% of the running back carries last year because you had CJ Donaldson as like the short yardage guy. Isaiah West was like the non-short yardage RB2 for a chunk of the year. And then like James Peoples was getting like some scraps here and there too. So you kind of like 3 guys filling the second running back role. And then like the first guy was pretty clear, I think, for Ohio State. So, and I don't know if they were in doing that with like the 3 behind, but we're hoping that someone would kind of emerge and take that second running back spot, which I guess never quite happened. So, but I think they would prefer that to happen. Yeah. For this year, whether that's Isaiah West, Jacoby Jackson, the guy they brought in from Florida, who's old and, has played some and doesn't have a ton of production to show for it, but maybe he can be a 80 carry a year guy for you or something like that, or one of these freshmen coming in, Legend Bay, Favor Aki. Like I don't know. It's a weird room. it's a difficult running back room, I think, to kind of wrap your mind around exactly what these guys are going to be. But was there not a time last season, kind of like in the middle of the year, where it felt like, I don't know, Isaiah West, maybe like that Wisconsin game? It was like Isaiah West, maybe he's figuring it out. I don't know that there's that much separation between Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. And then from that point on, like it didn't really play out that way, and Bo got the bulk of the carries. But I don't, even now after the season, when Bo rushed for 1,000 yards and Isaiah West was like kind of sparingly used, I don't know that there's a tremendous gap between those two guys. So I think if it were to be anybody to emerge as number 2 guy, it would be West. And they're classmates, and that's another interesting wrinkle to it. But I think Ohio State would prefer it. I don't know if it's definitely going to materialize, I guess is how I feel about it right now.
Okay. But you do think they would prefer it. Like you think that's officially where we are.
Yeah.
Ohio State doesn't really want to give 300 carries to one running back.
No, I think they'd very much like every season to play out the way that it played out with Travion Henderson and Quinshad Judkins in 2024, if they could make it be so.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I mean, like the one thing about that is like Travion was the guy, and then you brought in Quinshon for that. But Travion really was kind of always more of that home run speedster. Are you really wanting to put 24 carries per game on him? Then he did have the injury issue. I think Travion probably realized that's not best for him, that he was sort of, I think, very maybe open, to his credit, open to a compliment, right? Because of his history and the type of back he was. Like Bo's a little sturdier, right? Like I think Bo, like JK was a bowling ball. JK by his junior year was like, give me the ball 300 times. Give me the ball 70 times against Clemson in the playoff, right? Like I'll run with my half my body torn off, right? That he went out. And then you saw that, right? In 2019, as much as Master Teague was like a third team all Big Ten guy as the real backup to JK, and he was the backup. Right? When JK went out against Clemson and they had to give the ball to Master Teague, it was kind of like, oh, this does not look as good. And then JK had to come back in injured, right?
Yes.
But like JK went through like, holy moly. And I'll always remember, this is still like just back in the day at Cleveland.com, right? We were just standing in the parking lot at McDonald's like every third day of August practice being like, I think JK Dobbins might play. And then like 3 days later, be like, I'm pretty sure he's going to play. And then like 3 days later, be like, I think he might be a co-starter. And then by the beginning of the year, we're like, is he going to run for 4,000 yards? Remember like the evolution of JK through that camp?
Yes. Yeah, that was a fun time. Yeah. And then I remember that first game at Indiana when he ran for like 170 yards, and was also like at that time where he's from, when LaGrange, Texas was like going through some really bad flooding. So it's like he's got to worry about his family back home. He's a true freshman starting the season opener for Ohio State against a Big Ten team on the road. And he's like, I'm good. Here's 170 yards.
Yeah.
This is easy.
Bowling ball. God, that guy's a warrior. I can remember him like after that Clemson game, like limping back. I saw him down in the concourse, like limping back to the locker room, right? It looked like he had just been in battle. And it's just like, you watch the Smart Little Guy, Big Dumb Guy?
I haven't watched it yet. No, I haven't watched it yet. Yeah.
But it's like they're just like, so there's a battle in that show, right? And then it's like there's the aftermath of the battle. And the one guy's just beat all to heck. And it's like, I was like, it reminds me of J.K. Dobbins. It looks like he got like a jousting lance shoved through him against Clemson. And that's what J.K. Dobbins is. That's what he became by his junior year, because like I think his sophomore year, he was like, no, I don't want this. Like I am a physical enough running back. Like I don't want help. Right. And it makes me feel weird to have help. So whereas Travion, I think, was very open to help. And so I think like, so the part of it is like by the end of the career, like what JK did in his third year is exactly what you want. 2,000 yards, bell cow, unstoppable. And then what Travion did in his senior year at Ohio State is exactly what you want. It's a perfect 1-2 punch with two equal backs who are NFL players and dangerous when they have the ball in their hands, and equally talented, but in slightly different ways. And so having gone through a tough year too for both JK and Travion, you came out of it on the other end with perfection. But I wonder, like, what do you think Bo Jackson's ultimate path is a little more Travion? Let's have a guy here. We're going to do it together. Or a little more JK, get out of my way. Give me the ball 300 times and shove me through with a jousting lance.
I don't know. It's hard for me to get a read on because like we just got to know JK so well like early on, and not only was he good, but like he wasn't really overshadowed by anything. It was like he was the part of the offense that sort of like was capturing everyone's imagination. And that was not true for Bo. Like for as good as Bo was as a freshman, it was like, this is Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate show, buddy. You're just enjoy the ride, right? So we didn't talk to him that much. I wouldn't pretend to have a great feel for like what his personality is, and maybe through that you can maybe glean a little something about whether or not he'd prefer, kind of how things went for him last year, or if he'd be okay working in a tandem. I think the fact that he's not like a lifelong running back, right? Like he kind of arrived to the position a little late in high school and then got hurt like his senior year of high school. So it's not like he's been used to, I get the ball 30 times a game in his life, right? So maybe that can guard against some of the stuff that I think can be difficult for guys who are stars early and then their role changes a little bit. The difficulties that come with dealing with that.
Yeah. Last year, the stats, as you said, Bo Jackson 179 for 1,090 yards, 6.1 yards per carry. CJ Donaldson, who just like, this is not reflective of it because like 2/3 of his carries were from 2 yards and in at the goal line. So you can't average 7 yards per carry if every carry is at the 2. 96 carries, 361 yards, 3.8 yards per carry for CJ Donaldson. And then Isaiah West and James Peoples combined, who really like at various times, like that was the number 2 back as it turned out. 120 carries, 654 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. That's a little bit like that's kind of where Teague was behind Dobbins, right? In year 3. Like that's like a true like backup running back. Maybe you get the 3rd series. Maybe if it's a long drive and Bo Jackson was in for the first 7 plays, somebody else comes in, but it's not like alternating series. It's not some kind of like, oh, let's make sure we keep it equal. I do think, and we'll do a show leading into spring football, which starts on March 10th for Ohio State, which is right around the corner. And we certainly would invite you to join us over on the Substack. Join us here. Like ball's going to be here. Like exactly how that works out, like RB2 and like is Bo's out for the spring, right? Bo's out the shoulder.
Yeah, Ryan Day said on the radio a couple weeks ago that both Bo Jackson and Isaiah West, I think it's probably better to say like won't be full participants in the spring because they had some shoulder work done. I don't know the extent of that. My guess is like they just had some stuff cleaned up. I saw a picture of Bo on Instagram and like he doesn't have like a sling or anything like that. But I would imagine that like, you're not going to see them get carries in the spring game, but I think they'll probably be able to like run around and stuff.
Okay. But like moderately interesting as we draft our most interesting guys to watch in spring football, some combination of the Turbo Rogers, who was in the same class with Isaiah West and Bo Jackson, but was hurt last year, plus Legend Bay and Favor Aki as true freshmen, like kind of interesting to see if anybody, or the old guy. I don't really think. Do you really think the old guy? But like, open a little bit of like, who maybe will take advantage of the opportunity to pop a little bit and be like, yeah, I'm going to be part of the running back plan in 2026.
I think it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, I don't. It's no offense to Jacoby Jackson, and like if he proves me wrong, great. But I don't know that I'm holding my breath for something to pop there that hasn't popped in the previous 6 years he's been playing college football. So, but I think it was important to get a veteran. Like I think they needed like an older guy in that room to help show the guys how to go about your daily business. But
yes,
yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of Favor Aki and a lot of Legend Bay in the spring. And I don't even know. There's probably some walk-ons are going to be involved there too. But I think it's going to be a situation perhaps where spring is weird for running backs because like there's not a lot of full contact.
Right.
They're doing a lot of base stuff. Obviously, they're not playing games. So I think it's very easy to get carried away with whatever running back sparks you might see in the spring. And I'm sort of envisioning a scenario where like and I don't know how much practice we're going to get to watch, but like we go into a practice and it's like Legend Bay or Favor Aki looked really good today. And we start writing about like, here they come. And it's like, well, keep in mind that, Bo Jackson and Isaiah West aren't out there. Right. So I do think it's interesting. I actually don't know in the end, like how much ends up getting decided at that position in spring football.
All right. So if you've created this scenario, and listen, there's plenty of other guys, right? That again, you divided it into, you had 1,000 yards in the power conference as a true freshman running back. And then like, did you go up? Did you go down? Did you kind of stay the same? There were a lot of guys who went on to great success, right? It's not everybody hits a sophomore slump.
No. And I think even there were only 5 who like really kind of took off. And then there were 6 sort of in the middle that dropped off a little bit, but stayed above 1,000 yards. But even within that group, there were guys who dropped like 100 yards here or there, right? It's not like there weren't a lot of guys who had like, I had 1,900 rushing yards and then I had 900 the next year, right? And then even the guys who really fell off, like who had 1,000 as freshmen, who didn't have 1,000 as sophomores, there were 10. That was the largest group, but 8 of them were because of injury. Like 8 of them because like they didn't play in entire seasons. And if you look at like their yards per carry, probably would have gotten back to 1,000 yards at least had they played a full season. So there's actually not like a lot of. I think I think if you don't hit what you did as a freshman and you're still over 1,000, which is what J.K. Dobbins did in 2018, like I think you can still call that a slump because even J.K. would tell you like I was not the same player. I didn't play as well. He called that season a failure. So it's not like if you hit 1,000 yards you avoid the slump, but I think primarily you want to make sure you don't fall off a cliff entirely. And there actually weren't a ton of examples of that happening in the last. So I looked at the last 10 years. There are 24 of these seasons total, true freshman 1,000-yard seasons. 3 of them happened last year, so there were 21 where you could actually analyze their sophomore seasons. And there weren't a lot of this guy was great, and then all of a sudden the next year he was really bad.
Okay. So do you think, but you're talking about the guys who did drop off were because of injury. Would you draw any conclusion of like, hey, they kind of rode you a little bit as a true freshman, then when you came back as a sophomore, you got hurt?
Yeah, I think I didn't look into what exactly all of those injuries were, but yeah, I think that's a thing for sure. Like I think running back's interesting because I do think it's the easiest position to play early, but then you also get beat up a lot. So then it's like it's maybe the most difficult thing to manage in terms of like day-to-day getting your body right, stuff like that, doing the treatment, understanding like when you're actually hurt and perhaps shouldn't be playing and stuff like that. So I think that's a difficult balance for any young player, but running backs probably get exposed to that more than anybody as freshmen. So yeah, there's probably a slight cautionary tale in there about how you bounce back from that pretty big workload as a first-year player.
I do think Ohio State did a good job, like a really good job with Bo Jackson last year. Like given the realities of like, hey, CJ Donaldson, no, it's not really happening. Hey, James Peoples, no, it's not really happening. Hey, what are we going to do? And they figured out it was Bo, but didn't lean on him too hard, did have him ready down the stretch. Like I thought it was really like, I think a lot of credit to Carlos Lachlan. I think like that to manage that room when it turned out to be like not ideal. It was below, I think, the standard of the room, because the standard of the room is like, well, we shouldn't necessarily have to rely on this true freshman who's not a 5-star, who missed his senior year of high school. Like that wasn't the plan, but all of a sudden, like the other things didn't work. You thought it was CJ Donaldson and James Peoples, and it turns out not to be that. And they adapted. So credit to Carlos Lachlan, huge credit to Bo Jackson. But I do think that it's like, as he did enough to reach this threshold to be part of your story, but he wasn't a 5-star burst on the scene. Holy moly, this guy is a superstar in the making. Not quite the same way as JK and Trevion, right? Because those were bigger recruitments. And as much as like maybe you never exactly expect a true freshman to be the leading rusher at Ohio State, when JK and Trevion did it, it was like, oh man, this is a story. But it's also not completely unexpected. This is just proof of how talented these guys are. Where Bo was a little bit more of an underdog story, not that he's not talented, but because of the injury, because he kind of backed into it, right? I think there's some comparisons there where Trevion and JK were more like superstar in the making, spotlight on them. Holy moly, get ready for year 2. And I don't think that's exactly what Bo is.
No, I don't think he's in that spot. I think the thing you worry about is like that freshman year was great, but was it also your peak? And I think with Travion it was, right? With JK, as he was going through his sophomore year, with the benefit of hindsight, you probably did worry that perhaps it was, and of course, as a junior, he showed us that it wasn't. But even in that sample of like the 21 other guys nationally who had gone through their sophomore seasons, there were a couple, more like a handful. It was like, yeah, this guy was excellent as a freshman, but he never got any better. Like he was so good as a freshman, it was like almost an impossible bar to ever clear again. Like Nick Singleton at Penn State, I think is maybe the best example of the guys that I looked at for that story. But like Bo's season was good. He had some really fun moments, and most specifically, I think in the Michigan game. But it wasn't like he was carrying it 25 times for 130 yards in every single game, and showed himself to be like one of the great freshman backs we've ever seen. It's like he had a nice freshman season. But which like for me is like great. That's something to build off of, and I think he kind of will build off of it. Like I don't think he did set the bar too high. If you look at like some of the underlying numbers, like the ways that guys built upon very good freshman seasons and the stuff that I looked at was like, of course you can get more carries. But it was kind of like, did you take the next step in terms of like your explosiveness? Were you making guys miss? Were you starting to hit more home runs than maybe you hit as a freshman while you were very good? And I think that Bo's got there's a lot of meat left on that bone for Bo. Like his explosive numbers, frankly, like were kind of average for a guy who rushed for 1,000 yards. And I don't know that that's necessarily because like he's just an average running back. I think he's got a little more to him, and as he gets more comfortable and gets used to the workload and gets used to the speed of college and reading defenses and all that stuff. Like I look at his like lack of explosiveness as a freshman and think that's going to get better. Not that's what he is. But I guess I could be wrong. But I'm inclined to believe he's going to take a step forward there and probably be more productive than he was as a freshman.
It's almost, this is a ridiculous thing to say. It's not true at all. But he was good, but he wasn't too good. And JK and Travion were almost like too good. That's not. There's no such thing. But like so good, it's like you almost like, how could you, tough act to follow? It's your own act. And right. That's it. And Bo's was just a little bit different. I still think, though, having lived through the JK thing and the Travion thing, and even though Travion's had a physical component, there was still enough mental stuff there and they would talk about it. The thing, JK and Travion both kind of wore it on their sleeves, right? Like JK and Travion would come into an interview session in the middle of their sophomore years and be like, I'm not getting it done. I'm trying to hit home runs. And it's like, man, you are being very honest with us right here. Bo so far is a little bit more of like a man of few words. When I did a story last year about Bo Jackson and Isaiah West and like the future of them maybe being like the 1 and 2 in the backfield. And they're like, we're brothers and they're roommates and stuff and that kind of thing. And Isaiah West would be like, this is why Bo Jackson and I are so close. And we think like this. And this is why we compliment each other. And then Bo Jackson would be like, yeah, that's my guy. And then like Isaiah West would be like, have like another like 9-paragraph answer. So I think like Isaiah West is a little bit more like JK and Travion, where it's like he'll pour it out. But like he's trying to come up, and Bo, I think, just maybe takes it as it comes because he wasn't a 5-star, because he wasn't a running back his whole life, because no one, he didn't play against Texas in the opener. And all of this was kind of like a bonus. So I don't know. Now, the only thing is, if he really thought about leaving, and if there was sort of a like, okay, no, we don't want you to go, and this is just, it's free agency. But if it's like, okay, well now, like, live up to the dough, man.
Sure.
Like that would be the one thing that might be a little different of like what the actor trying to follow is maybe not just what you did on the field, but that like now you got to raise.
There will be a component of that, I think, this year. And I don't think it's unfair, right? Like, for whatever reason, some of the details of that got out into public, so everyone I think is sort of aware of what was going on there. Like, exactly what happened, no, but like at least aware that there was a thing, right? So yeah, and Ohio State had to do something to keep Bo Jackson in the fold. So it's like, okay, it's no different than whatever. Like, Well, I guess it's slightly different, but it's in the same vein of like a guy in the NFL like holding out in training camp. It's like, all right, you held out in training camp, you got what you wanted. Now go put it on the field. And I'm not saying you should hold Bo Jackson to that kind of standard, but I think some people will because it's sort of unavoidable now in a world where guys are getting paid to play.
And will he do it to himself? Will that be in his head in some way? Like that is just a very human reaction to to any kind of thing. Like just think about when you and I got the big bucks and like the pressure that it put on us. It's like, oh man, what are we gonna do now? Percent not worried, but the step short of worried, but like percent aware that you are for some sort of year two, not even downturn, but like everything that we're discussing for the last 35 minutes. It's on your radar for Bo Jackson going into year two. Like to what percent? And I'll start. I would say like I'm 55% on this, just having lived through it. And like, I can see it. Like I can just like, you can just hear it in your head because like whatever, he was out for spring and then other guys flashed and then like other guys got some things. And then like, oh, well, it's hard when you renegotiate in the offseason and that wasn't really a running back and he's still learning and as good as he was last year, he's not a finished product. And it's like, oh, that's why Bo had 11 carries for 26 yards, against Indiana. Like I just can see it because it feels so human to me. And it's not a guarantee and it's not a pre-criticism. I am just saying that if there are Ohio State fans out there who are like, Bo Jackson, 1,800 yards, All-American, watch out, baby. Like, I think there's a very real opposite side to this just because we've seen it. And even in your research, like it's enough, not just at Ohio State, but I just think it can be a real thing. So I would say my awareness that it could be a thing in this situation, I would say I'm like 55% prepared for it.
I'm not quite that high. I'm maybe more like 30%.
Okay.
Because I think like the good but not too good factor influences me there. The fact that like I didn't look in this for everybody, but I looked into it for like the guys who took the biggest steps forward and the guys who fell off the most and like what their offensive line situations were. And unsurprisingly, the guys who took the biggest step forward had a higher average number of offensive line returners than the guys who fell off. And Bo's got 4 offensive line starters back this year, which I think factors into this. We're talking about running backs, but your environment matters, and I think
100%.
I think he'll be in a pretty good one with that much offensive line experience returning and also a more kind of run-oriented offensive coordinator coming into play. Like I think the thing that would be like sort of like most likely to take away from Bo's production and have him like drop off slightly from last year is just if there actually is somebody else in the room who's ready to be in more of a tandem with him. And that's a little, like I said earlier, it's a little hard for me to wrap my mind around at the moment. But it's not impossible. But that's the thing that's driving most of my 30%. The one thing I will say, like I didn't include this in the article because I actually don't know that it's a thing. It's just like sort of an observation. I don't know if it's like a trend or whatever. So Bo was on the lower end of like rushing yards for the 24 guys who have done it in the last 10 years. He had 1,090, which was 17th out of the 24. Everyone else below him dropped off after their freshman year. All but one. The only one who didn't was Devin Singletary. But everyone, the other guys behind him, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys, did drop off. Some of them were hurt.
Yeah.
But the four guys who I wrote about who dropped off and weren't injured, were all guys who had like 1,000 yards but fewer rushing yards than Bo Jackson. So like, I don't know if that's like if you're just creeping over 1,000, maybe there's something to like, you did peak early or like that. That's about as good as you're going to be as a player. It's not like there weren't a lot of, as I said before, like guys who rushed for 1,200 yards or more as true freshmen who then came back the next year. Actually, there weren't any. Everyone who had more than 1,200 yards as a freshman, if they were below 1,000 yards as sophomores, it's because they were hurt.
Okay. Just something to think about. there's a lot of things to think about with college football, and we'd like
Yeah.
to talk about them, especially in the offseason. We'll see you from the Combine. You can join us over on the Substack, BillandDougOSU.substack.com. But we certainly will also talk, at least on one show, from the Combine here on this channel about what we're seeing. 11 Ohio State players at the Combine. We will be there for 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday, and we will be there for 9 of the 11 guys. So that's Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs and Caden McDonald and Caden Curry and Lorenzo Styles Jr. and Davidson Ignosin. Like, those are the defensive line and linebackers. Will be talking to the media on Wednesday, and then tight ends and the secondary will talk on Thursday. So also Max Clare and Will Kazmarek will be over there. So we'll do everything we can to bring you everything interesting going on with Ohio State football in both podcast, YouTube, and written form. Again, BillandDougOSU.substack.com. Thanks for the research, Landis.
Yeah, I love doing this stuff. I like to make a spreadsheet, It's fun.
Nothing like a good spreadsheet. And then just like talk through a spreadsheet. It's like we made a business presentation. We just made a Bo Jackson business presentation to the good people out here for 40 minutes. So thanks for doing that. Thanks to you guys, as always, for being here. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the Bill and Doug Show.